Our work environment is evolving at lightning speed. And because work is our business here at Monday.com, we decided to dive in and take you with us. I'm Yadin Katz, and this is What's Working, a podcast by Monday.com where we sit down with managers from the most successful companies in the world to learn straight from the source about how they approach challenges and solve problems at work. And today, the daunting pursuit for talent, how to attract new employees and keep them by your side for a long time.
So at LinkedIn, we have what we call the economic graph, which is basically a visual representation of what is going on in the economy and in the workforce.
Fede Ambrogi is the Director of Client Solutions at LinkedIn, a company which has been a microcosmos of the world of work over the past few years. When employees look for jobs, they go to LinkedIn. When they boast their achievements, they go to LinkedIn. The platform holds mountains of data about the way all of us users work and how we search for a new one.
And so we have more than 800 million members, 50 and plus million companies, and 18 million jobs. So we have a good database where we can look at all those trends.
Fede has been working at the company for the past 5 years, during the transformational COVID years. She has seen firsthand the changes in the way people work and sometimes barely work. She's the perfect person to sit with for a conversation about how we can attract new workforce and keep it happy. So Fede, first I want to thank you for joining us today. But I must say that it's a shame you're not actually here in Tel Aviv on this beautiful sunny day. You're in London, right?
Yes, I am. And today, incredibly enough, there is some sun outside. So it's good. Good weather in London, but I'm sure Tel Aviv is better.
Oh, well, I can't imagine making you miss those rare sunny London days. Okay, I'll try to make this quick. I would love for you to please start off by introducing yourself. Kindly tell our listeners about you and the role you play, what you do at LinkedIn.
Well, you mentioned I'm the Director of Client Solution for our marketing solution at LinkedIn. And I'm looking after some of the market in both EMEA and Latin America. So really, I work in B2B advertising, and I sell a LinkedIn solution to both advertiser and agencies across a lot of industry, but some of the top one are tech, financial services, and so on.
So we mentioned earlier that you have a lot of data about the current trend lines of, let's say, modern day workforce. So let's dive right to it. By looking at this data, what would you say has changed significantly in the past few years in terms of HR?
We have seen, for example, pre-pandemic, 2% of the jobs advertised were remote. Then in March 22, 20% of those jobs became remote, which is 10 times the amount. Now, we're seeing that I think in September, we're seeing that going down a little bit. We're at 15% of the job. But I think the concept of remote and certainly hybrid working has completely changed and transformed, and it is here to stay. And what we found out is 87% of employees, let's say globally, believe that they're being more productive now that they work, hybrid or remote. They're more productive. And actually, it's not just a belief. We have validated that because we see that people tend to work more time than before the pandemic, after hours and during the weekend. Now, what do you think is the percentage of managers that think that their people are more productive? 12%. So there is a huge discrepancy.
Oh, well, employees working long hours, I think that's a double-edged sword. Because Fede, we might get high productivity rates, but the team eventually is getting fatigued. I mean, when we don't put clear limits, such as working hours, people start working during the weekends, on holidays, at nighttime. Wouldn't all that, at the end of the day, lead to a general sense of dissatisfaction from work?
So very true. And actually, work-life balance is the most important area for employees. That's what they look at. 67% of employees believe that the most important thing at work is to keep their work-life balance. And this is even more true from Gen Z. So we really need to start to listen and to understand what are the priorities. And as you mentioned, what are the tools that we have as company and as manager that we need to put in place to ensure that there is that within the flexibility, we also look after our employee and we maintain a balance that is healthy for everybody, because those people otherwise will leave.
Let's talk about recruitment. What are the keys for getting the best talent out there?
Well, at the top of everything, companies are starting to recognize and realize that the employer brand, the way they position themselves in the talent space, is super important. And so investing in communicating that brand, which really is about communicating to employee or potential employee, what are the company's values? What is important? What's the vision, the mission that a company is trying to achieve, and why and how is fundamental. And this is an area that we started now to get into the area where I work every day with my customer. We talk about employer branding, but actually we talk about unified brand. Because if you think about a company, really there are three audiences. There are employee or potential employees, there are consumers, and then there are the investors. And how you communicate to those three different audiences needs to be very consistent and cohesive.
So focusing on the potential employees, what tips would you give on how to best recruit them?
I'm going to go super tactical here. The first one, your application process needs to be very quick and easy. Don't make it complicated. Secondly, you give them flexibility. Yes, you need not only to give them, but to communicate in your job description what type of company you are and how you stand from a flexibility perspective, and actually be very specific of what are the benefits that you offer. And that goes, the benefits actually linked to the third suggestion or tip, which is about emphasizing the company's perspective from a diversity inclusion perspective. And so, benefits like parental leave or other type of benefits are super important beyond the traditional one. So those three things, and also on the diversity piece or inclusiveness, the language, using inclusive language is fundamental. Sometimes, and we have cases, some of the most traditional company, they still use terminology that is very much associated with a masculine type of profile. There are some words that are not attractive for female, very simply.
Do you have any examples?
Well, they are all those words that somehow refer to an aggressive environment. When it becomes too competitive, especially in sales, anything that is too strong, too much, women don't look at it. And often that's not what the company wants, right? They're not doing that. They just want to say, it's a fast-pacing, ever-changing environment and it's challenging. And we also like that. As a woman, I like that. But the way it's worded is fundamental.
So you communicate your brand and you hire great talents, your team is great, but then how do you get people to stay? In many cases, they want to leave after a year and then you end up losing your people. What do you do?
So to retain, two things, that there could be much more, but I'll focus on two things. Sense of belonging and always learning. On the sense of belonging, once the employee is in, they need to feel that what they do, it matters. And they can do it in the most authentic way. And so how the company and the company and the people that work at the company, the manager, can create those conditions for you can be whoever you are here without any fear. And by doing so, you do work that matters, not just for yourself, but work that matters for the society. One thing that I learned is that you need to be very clear. You just don't create a sense of belonging. You need to say it, hey, it's my objective for all of us to work in a place where we feel we belong, which means that we can all act authentically. And then I try to implement it from the bottom, which is in our meetings. I make sure, for example, that diverse perspectives are represented. And if there are not diverse perspectives, I invite people to propose it. I model the diversity and bring in a different point of view. And sometimes I'm afraid of doing that. You're always in meeting where you hear everybody saying the same thing and you think, oh, they're either my peers or sometimes even higher level than me. But I think differently. I don't agree. And I force myself to model it. So there is a lot of that, but at the top of it, there needs to be that super clear and communicated objective that we do not only state, but we create a very clear plan with behaviors that we put into practice.
Okay, so that's belonging, and you also mentioned learning. What do you mean by that?
If employees don't feel that they learn and they develop themselves, they leave. Especially all of them, but Generation Z even more than others. And so it's about the companies and manager ensuring that there is that always learning opportunities. A couple of things that we do at LinkedIn. From a management perspective, we've been growing skills around inclusive leadership, as we realize is fundamental. And so we are investing on our managers on learning those skills. And from a sort of full population of employee point of view, we very recently, actually, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, we had Career Week. Career Week is a full week dedicated to thinking about your career, giving you resources and tools on how to reflect and progress on your career. There were lots of people coming, sort of public speaker example in our industry and around that came to speak to us and giving their perspective. We have lots of example of internal mobility is one of the fundamental pieces as well, especially in big organization, and we have example, and we put them on the spotlight of people that were doing a job today. I have a great example in my team or in my immediate team, somebody who was doing sales and moved from sales to sales operation and analytics. So there are a lot of examples that we think it's very important to highlight not only the example, but the path. And so what the focus on the company today is about is how do we highlight those paths. Sometimes they're already there. Sometimes we need to put them a little bit better, but also we need to make them known to people so that they can go into those different paths and continuously learning.
And since launching these types of programs of belongings, of learnings and skills, do you see a change in the trend line? Do you see more Gen Zs staying longer at the company? Do you actually see the change in the data itself?
So for LinkedIn, I don't know yet. I think those things needs to be evaluated on the longer term. But I also hear what people say, right? So I've been hiring recently, and every single new person in the organization that I speak to, and I say, so how is it going? Or I think they all tell me that it goes super well. They're incredibly surprised by the culture and how it's not just a talk, but it's the reality. And then they say that they love those opportunities on learning on the job and being exposed to much more that they were traditionally exposed. And I think when I have career conversations, that's what really struck them, the fact that there is a lot of emphasis on their development. And we say something at LinkedIn. We say we want to leave people better than what we found them. And what it means, and it's been, I think, from the founders really started, there is no expectation that somebody that comes at LinkedIn stays here forever. That's not what we want. But we want to make sure that in the time people are at LinkedIn, they found themselves better. They improve, they develop, right? And we believe that it is almost an accelerator. Spending time at LinkedIn, we hope that is an accelerator for an individual career.
I love that. I think that is a smart and rational cultural mindset, because as a manager, it's basically looking at reality straight in the eyes, not forcing my views, but rather fitting myself into reality. I think people can take a lot from that. What do you think the race for talent will look like in 2 years' time?
I wish I had an answer to that, to be honest. There is a lot going on at the moment. And the reality is that we are in a very uncertain period, right? We have, the economic situation across the world. We certainly see a sort of a slowdown. And that in the States and in many other places, we're still trying to see, is it going to be a slowdown? Is it going to be a recession? How long for? So a lot of variables at the moment are unclear. But I think some of the things that have been a major, I would say, a seismic change in the work are here to stay. The whole concept of flexibility is here to stay. The whole concept of purpose-driven organization are the ones that are going to win on the war of talent, are here to stay.
Finally, speaking about the economic slowdown, how do you think it will affect employees and companies?
Well, a couple of signals we're seeing now. The first one is, while I mentioned it, people were changing job at a higher rate than normal. That now sort of slow down, right? We're back to flat. There isn't that acceleration. Another thing that we've seen is that for the same amount of jobs, we now have double applications. So if before for one job we had 10 applicants, today we got 20. So there starts to be a little bit more competition for the same job. What it means exactly, I think it will need to play out, but some signals of things not necessarily changing, but adapting to the now. And I think, it is about understanding how do we adapt to the new conditions, but we all will react similarly. But then what do we do differently from other competitors? And how we invest in that uniqueness, I think is going to be the winning card for companies and managers.
Fede, thank you so much for being here. It was great talking with you.
Thank you. It's been a really, really nice chat. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to be here together with you today, or virtually together.
Almost. Until next time you're in Tel Aviv.
Yes.
And that was What's Working. This episode was produced by Danny Noodleman. A special thanks to our content writer, Jackie Goldberg, and to Shai Inbar. Stay tuned for the next episode of What's Working, coming up soon.